On September 26, 2025, the United Nations General Assembly witnessed an extraordinary moment of political theatre. As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu prepared to take the stage, the cavernous hall of the UN in New York became the setting for one of the most dramatic public responses to an Israeli leader in recent history. The announcement of Netanyahu's name by the chair of the session was met with a sharp divide among the diplomats present. Some members of the assembly rose from their seats to applaud, showing solidarity with Israel and its embattled leader. Yet, at the same moment, a significant number of delegates stood up, turned their backs, and quietly filed out of the chamber in protest. This striking visual, cheers from one side, a dignified walkout from the other, instantly captured the attention of cameras and viewers around the world. The scene was emblematic of the deep rifts in global opinion over Israel's ongoing war with Hamas and its broader posture in the Middle East. The cheers were mostly from allies who see Israel as a frontline state, confronting militant groups and regional adversaries like Iran. The walkouts came from nations that have increasingly criticised the heavy toll of Israel's military operations in Gaza, particularly the civilian casualties, and that opposed Netanyahu's refusal to halt military campaigns without preconditions. As Netanyahu made his way to the podium, the cameras swept across the hall, capturing the reactions in vivid detail. Delegates from some Western countries remained seated, poised to listen. Others, particularly from Arab and some global South nations, left in organised protest. The mix of applause and the scraping sound of chairs being pushed back underscored the contentious nature of Netanyahu's appearance. When he finally stood at the rostrum, Netanyahu began his remarks facing a hall that was visibly divided and symbolically incomplete. Entire sections of the General Assembly hall were empty, a silent rebuke to his presence. Some of those empty chairs bore messages that spoke louder than words. The Iranian delegation's seats were adorned with photographs of children killed in the conflict in Gaza, a pointed reminder of the war's human cost. Nearby, the Palestinian delegation's seats were also empty, a deliberate absence intended to convey rejection of Netanyahu's policies and his address. Netanyahu opened his speech by framing Israel's position as one of existential necessity. He recalled the events of October 7th, the Hamas-led assault that Israel described as the bloodiest attack on its soil in decades. He called that day our darkest hour, and he presented Israel's subsequent military campaign as an unavoidable response. "We will finish the fight against Hamas," he declared, emphasizing that the campaign would continue until all remaining Israeli hostages, 48 still believed to be held in Gaza, were returned home and Hamas was dismantled as a military force. The Prime Minister turned his focus to Iran, accusing Tehran of backing armed groups across the region and of seeking to use the conflict in Gaza to expand its influence. He warned that the international community could not afford to ignore Iran's nuclear ambitions, reiterating his long-standing call for vigilance and for renewed pressure on the Iranian government. Netanyahu accused some UN members of turning a blind eye to terrorism, a charge that drew visible reactions from those who had stayed in the chamber, some shaking their heads, others sitting impassively. Beyond his words, the images of the address told a parallel story. The camera captured close-ups of the French delegation listening intently, the Egyptian seats left empty in quiet protest, and the Israeli delegation seated firmly, their faces showing both resolve and awareness of the moment's symbolism. A wide shot of the chamber revealed vast patches of unoccupied chairs, amplifying the sense that Netanyahu's message was landing on only part of the international audience. Outside the assembly, the scene was just as charged. Demonstrators gathered near the UN headquarters in New York. Some carried Israeli flags and banners demanding the release of hostages. Others held photographs of Palestinian children killed in airstrikes, calling for an immediate ceasefire. The chants and vigils outside mirrored the divided mood inside, where sympathy for victims on both sides of the conflict was evident, but where political positions remained starkly opposed. Diplomatic reactions poured in quickly after Netanyahu's speech. European envoys, including representatives from Germany and the European Union, expressed support for Israel's right to self-defense, but stressed the urgent need for unhindered humanitarian access and a path toward a ceasefire. The United States backed Israel's security concerns, but once again urged restraint to prevent further civilian casualties. representatives from the Arab League condemned what they described as Israel's unwillingness to engage in meaningful negotiations and criticised the scale of the military campaign in Gaza. The juxtaposition of applause, silence and walkouts was not unprecedented in UN history, but the scale of the dissent made it a defining image of this particular session. Analysts pointed out that Netanyahu's confrontational approach to the UN over the years, including his past use of visual props to warn about Iran's nuclear program, has often drawn mixed reactions. Yet the walkouts during this appearance marked one of the most significant collective rebukes of his tenure on the global stage. Commentators also noted that the empty seats and photo displays of slain children functioned as a form of symbolic diplomacy. Without uttering a word, those gestures conveyed powerful messages about moral responsibility, human suffering, and the growing impatience of many nations with a conflict that has shown little sign of resolution. For Netanyahu's supporters, however, the image of the Israeli leader standing firm at the podium, undeterred by the empty chairs, served as a demonstration of resolve and consistency. They argue that the cheers and applause from allies prove that Israel still commands significant support in defending itself against terrorism and in resisting Iranian influence. The clash of symbols, applause versus walkouts, speeches versus silence, military resolve versus humanitarian pleas, reflects the broader global debate over how to balance national security with international humanitarian norms. This tension was on full display as the Israeli leader delivered his address. Observers suggest that the mass walkout may be remembered as much as the speech itself. It highlighted the diplomatic isolation Israel increasingly faces in certain circles, even as it retains strong ties with major allies. It also demonstrated how international opinion is being shaped not just by policy debates, but by the war's harrowing human cost, amplified by images of destroyed neighborhoods in Gaza and ongoing hostage crises. As Netanyahu concluded his remarks, he reiterated that peace would be possible if Hamas were to release the hostages and renounce violence. He claimed that Israel remained open to a peaceful resolution, but only if its fundamental security concerns were guaranteed. As he left the podium, the chamber, which had been partially empty, began to refill as delegates returned for the next address, a visual reminder that in the world of international diplomacy, attention can be as fleeting as it is intense. The episode served as a powerful example of how, in international politics, gestures often speak as loudly as words. On this day at the UN, the cheers of support, the symbolic protests of empty seats, and the photographs of lost children all combined to create a layered narrative, one that extended far beyond the content of Netanyahu's speech. The images and reactions from the UNGA session quickly spread across global media platforms, shaping headlines and sparking debate in capitals around the world. Supporters of Israel hailed Netanyahu's defiance as a necessary stand at a time of crisis, while critics warned that his uncompromising stance risked prolonging a conflict already marked by immense suffering on both sides. For many diplomats and observers, the day's events reflected not just the politics of a single country, but the wider fractures in the international order, an order struggling to reconcile security imperatives with humanitarian principles. The cheers, the walkouts, and the empty seats will be remembered as visual testimony to those divisions and as a moment that captured the enduring complexity of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in a single dramatic episode at the heart of global diplomacy.
We'll hear an address by His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly. Hall. Please, order in the hall. Please, order in the hall. Order in the hall.
אני פונה עליכם מעל בימת האו"ם. לא שכחנו. That number has dwindled to under 20%. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of all of the above. All of the above. Correct. All of the above. Personal. You remember those beepers? The pagers? We paged loudspeakers connected to this microphone in the hope, rather, an immortal threat to the civilized world. We lifted a dark cloud, babies alive. They burnt babies alive in front of their parents. Starved, tortured, deprived of any. We'd have to establish 5 CIAs to face down a hostile media and anti-Semitic mobs demanding Israel. Others, you want me to name all the genocidal leaders of history?